Hey guys, welcome back to the What to Do channel. Today is not really a tutorial or anything. This is basically just on if you're starting out as a mechanic, and depending on the type of mechanic you want to be, one of the things that I found really important that I struggled with at first was years ago when I wanted to be a mechanic. I thought it would come quite easy, quite natural, because growing up with my brothers taking starters out of cars, transmissions, alternators, water pumps, it was easy to take something apart and put it back in. And a lot of people, not everybody, but most people can look at something and figure out how to take it off and put it back in. Now, depending on how experienced you are, it might take you longer than others, but working at a car dealer or something, it's a little bit more beneficial, right? So instead of fixing the transmission, it'd probably be better if you sold the transmission to somebody, and especially if you're making a commission, you're gonna do very well. But when you work for a company that has a fleet of stuff that relies on those machines to make money, it becomes a little bit different. And that's where I struggled from transferring into that field, where you have to literally diagnose problems, and the idea is to save money. And if you can figure out how to diagnose things and how things actually operate rather than just removing things and putting them back, it will make you really stand out as a mechanic, especially if you're coming into the establishment replacing somebody else, and they can look back and go, wow, since we've had this guy, we spent $150,000 last year on parts. And since we had this guy, we've only been averaging about $40,000 a year spending. And that all comes with being able to diagnose properly. Now, what I did was, I was really good at just taking stuff out and putting it back in, but I wasn't so good at diagnosing until I really just started sitting home at night. And any time that I had free time, I would watch videos on YouTube such as this and figure out how things actually work. And if you can figure out how things work and how things operate, you're gonna be a much better mechanic. Okay, so we'll take, for example, I'm working on this project here. It's actually a sand rake that they use in the bunkers at a golf course. Now, the situation with this is it would run good on flat surfaces, but coming out of the bunkers or going up hills, it would struggle. Now, years ago, I would say, okay, well, it needs a new pump. Let's rip the pump out and let's put the pump back in. That was simple to me. But diagnosing now, and this pump for this machine is about $2,000. And this is the pump that came out of there. Basically, this is your main pump. So I don't want to say it's easy. It was a task taking it out, but it's easier to remove it and just replace a new one, especially with the price of it. But being that I'm in a situation now where we need to save money and try to get this fixed without having to dish out $2,000, knowing how these operate and what to look for to fix these is now very crucial. And if you know what to look for on the inside of these, on the typical common problems that they have, you would know what to look for when you take this apart, put it back together, and save the company a lot of money. For example, this could just be a simple gasket inside, which is causing this to lose pressure, or there's a bad thrust bearing or something. So learning how to diagnose and what to look for in these pumps definitely is helpful in this line of work. And another example would be you take a diesel motor, which is much different than a gas motor, and understanding how diesel motors work. So if you have any experience with diesel motors, you know that in colder weather they're a little bit tougher to start in the morning, and that's because of quite a few reasons. They already use a thicker oil than regular automobiles, usually a 15W40. Now when it gets cold, that 15W40, which is already thick, gets even thicker, and the oil pump has to work even harder, and the starter has to work even harder to start the motor. Now, diesels have glow plugs, and if you have a bad glow plug, you're trying to start the machine. Years ago, I would say, okay, it has a bad glow plug, I need to replace it. But now, knowing what the glow plug actually does and how a diesel motor operates, I can still get that machine started even though it has a bad glow plug without actually having to replace it, just in case they need to use that machine immediately. So there's tips and tricks to starting diesels with bad glow plugs. I won't get into too much detail with that now, but basically those cylinders need to generate heat before that machine's actually going to start. So if you have a weak battery, the motor is not moving fast enough. There's not enough amps moving to generate that heat to cause that machine to fire. So you're going to want to put a battery charger hooked up to it, put it on jump start, and you want to crank it. Now, the more you crank that diesel motor over, the more heat it's going to generate, and eventually it will start. So you can get it started without the glow plug. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't learn how diesel motors operate. Basically, if you didn't know that, you would have to tell your establishment, well, it needs a glow plug, we can't use it, because you didn't know how it worked and you weren't able to get it started. Now, if you take a fuel pump, for example, and let's say you have a machine that is not getting fuel and the fuel pump is bad, but that machine needs to be working immediately. So you're in a situation where you can't just take the pump out and put it back in. A lot of people can do that. But if you understand how a fuel pump works, they actually have little DC motors inside of them. And a lot of times when you run the vehicle or the machine low on gas, that fuel pump gets hot every time it's low on gas, and it can seize up. And what happens is there's a gear inside the DC motor in there, which will freeze up sometimes. And to get that machine running, being that you know how it operates, sometimes you can just tap on the pump, which will get that gear going again, enough to be able to maybe use the machine a couple more days. It could last another month. It could crap out in 10 minutes. But knowing how it works will help you be able to possibly get that vehicle or machine going again. I'm going to give you one more example, which is a real simple, self-explanatory way to put all of this of what I'm trying to say. So we all know what a wrench is, right? Okay, and here we have a 9/16 bolt and a nut and a 9/16 wrench. Now, we all know that the wrench fits snug on there and you're able to turn the nut, right? So, the problem now, and this is where we diagnose and solve the problem. So let's say you need to get this nut off of there. You only have this wrench, which clearly does not fit. See if I can hold that on there with one hand. Okay, you can see it's just spinning. This is the only wrench you have in the shop, and you don't know what to do. You can't get the nut off. But if you examine for a minute of how this actually works, now we know the wrench, this bottom, should be snug up against that nut in order to turn this. So the easy, simple solution would be to take a quarter, a screwdriver, anything, even a washer. All right, let me see if I can do this with two hands here. So we put the wrench on, and then we take our washer and we fill the gap. Okay, now you can turn it. And that was by understanding how the wrench works. That's just a simple way to put it. So the same thing's going to go towards everything, even stuff in regular everyday life that doesn't pertain to mechanics. It's just learning how things work is going to make you better. And if you're looking to be a mechanic, I definitely recommend is just watching tons of videos, and not just one video, because every mechanic does things differently. But watch a whole bunch of videos and just really absorb yourself with all this knowledge. It's going to save your company that you're working for a ton of money by you being able to diagnose things. And it's going to make your job a lot easier, because then you're not getting involved with such big projects. Ever since I started getting really good at diagnostics, I found that I haven't ripped out a complete transmission or a motor or anything in a long time, because now I'm diagnosing and I'm going right to the source of the problem, which is making things more simpler. But that's it. That's just my tip of the day. So please, guys, give me a subscribe below and a like. I do these videos daily, trying to get my subscribers up. And when you do get your mechanic's job, stop back here often because I do videos every day, and maybe there's something that can help you out. See you guys next time.